How's it going, people? Welcome back to Casual Gamer Reviews. Today I'll be looking at the new expansion for Alan Wake 2, The Lakehouse, developed by Remedy Entertainment. It took me about 3.5 hours to complete, and yeah, I read all the documents. Reviewed on Xbox Series X. Gameplay. In The Lakehouse, you take control of Agent Kieran Estevez of the Federal Bureau of Control. This expansion, unlike the previous DLC, very much goes back towards the survival horror roots. Classic flashlight and gun combat, lots of in-game recordings of real-life people giving tidbits of stories, puzzles to solve to progress, and lots of running for your life from terrifying monsters. The puzzles themselves are relatively easy bar a couple. I would have enjoyed a bit more head-scratching for some of these. Healing and bullets are relatively scarce, especially on higher difficulties. Enemies are erratic and familiar from the base game, apart from the main new enemy, the painted monsters. These monsters can only be stunned for the first half of this expansion, but you will then find a weapon that can defeat them later on. However, the bullets for this weapon are far fewer than the number of these monsters that you will encounter, so running is still your best option. I would recommend taking the Lakehouse slow and make sure you are cautious of your surroundings or it will lead to your death. The gameplay of this expansion, much like Alan Wake 2 itself, is my idea of a perfect survival horror akin to that of Resident Evil 2. Visuals. The Lakehouse is insanely creepy. The maniacal painting that smears the walls is unsettling. The dead bodies littered about the place is disturbing, and the designs of these new painted monsters is absolutely terrifying. Imagine a multicolored Slender Man seeping out of a wall and choking you to death. It made me jump out of my skin on several occasions. Yeah, they're scary. The lighting is phenomenal throughout. In some instances you're restricted to the beam of your flashlight, in others you have pulsating lights indicating your imminent doom. At every turn the visual design of this expansion is spot on. Audio and music. Remember in my last video how I mentioned the audio-visual jump scares from the base game that made my pants brown were not existent in Night Springs? Well, throw that out the window because they are back in full force here. This expansion is definitely scary. Playing with my headphones, I audibly screamed at least 3 times. Moment-to-moment gameplay is always accompanied by the most edge-of-your-seat ominous tones. It really makes you nervous to peek round every corner. Plus, if that's not enough to get your hair standing on end, on top of all of this, there is the constant bubbling and swishing sound of paint moving around you. Is that the water cooler you just accidentally bumped into? Or is it one of those horrifying painted monsters moving closer to you? You never really know, and that severely adds to the tension. One more thing to note is in usual Remedy style, there seems to be a whole new song made for this expansion that you hear once during the game and then once again on credits, and it is enjoyable and also relevant to the story. Story and dialogue. This expansion takes place in the timeline of the main game. It is what Agent Estevez goes through before meeting up with Saga Anderson later on. It takes place in the FBC's lab closest to Cauldron Lake, the Lakehouse. Estevez enters looking to speak to the co-heads of research, Dr. and Dr. Mormont. It seems the lab is on lockdown and nobody is to be seen, and it is your job to descend each level of the facility to discover what has happened. I don't want to get into spoilers, but what I will say is that it really connects Alan Wake to Control even more so than previously. Each document discovered is packed full of lore and definitely worth the read. There is also a fair amount of recordings scattered about of people talking about events leading up to present day. The expansion as a whole has a very intriguing message about expression of art and what it means, but also explores AWEs, or Altered World Events, much like Control and its expansions, which I find really interesting. All of these things combined do a really great job of setting the scene of the disaster you see before your eyes. The Lakehouse is an expansion that is almost perfect in every way. The only criticisms I can give it is that I think it is far too short and also that most of the puzzles are a bit too easy. Alan Wake 2, The Lakehouse, gets a casual gamer score of 9 out of 10.
I will take what they think is possible. But I will break it.